but not all the time.
Hey everybody, I was inspired by the sunset and I wanted to do some stories at sunset. So people were like, is that real? Here we go again.
Yeah.
There you go. So I'm going to tell some stories. I'm going to hop on here, tell some stories at sunset. So you'll get to see the sunset and you'll get to hear some stories. How much fun is that? How much more fun could it possibly be? Just want to arrange things. There we go. There's going to be stories at sunset, see? All right, stories at sunset. Yes, it is beautiful, isn't it? Malarama, Josh Gora. See, this is storytelling at sunset. Stories at sunset. What kind of story should I tell? Well, I'm going to be, hey, Richard Main, Ray Cruz, stories at sunset, Vince Davis. I'm going to tell some stories here at sunset, and that's what I'm going to do. I want to tell the story of my first celebrity photo that I ever really got. I'm thinking, yeah, the first celebrity photo that I ever got was President George H.W. Bush, right? That was the first celebrity photo that I ever got. Now, you got to start the story where the story begins. The story begins on a boat in Marina del Rey in like 1999. And I had injured my knees. I was having a hard time with my knees. And I was at my chiropractor's getting an adjustment on his boat. His name is Big Stu. Big Stu lived on a boat. I lived on a boat. He would do chiropractic adjustments on his boat. And I went there to get an adjustment. And he goes, have you tried healing your knees with raw nutrition? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, here, check this book out. And he hands me this book called We Want to Live Free from Disease by Ogenes Vanderplanets. And I look at it and I go, And I flip to a random page in the middle of the book and I see this paragraph that I read. And it says, if your hair is thinning or if your knees are weak and feel like they're going to give out from under you, then you have a thyroid deficiency and you need to eat more raw oysters, clams, and scallops from the sea. I'm telling the story of how I met George Bush, the president, 41. And I'm like, wow, because at that time I was starting to lose my hair and my knees were so weak and my legs felt like they were going to give out from under me so much that I couldn't go down a flight of stairs without holding on to the balcony, to the railing. I had to hold the railing when I went down a flight of stairs. And I said, wow, this looks interesting. Could I borrow this book? And he goes, no, you can't borrow the book. You have to buy the book. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, it's $30. You should buy it. And I go, okay, I bought the book. And I buy the book and I read the story of Ogenes Vanderplanets. And And by the way, I was like so interested in this because oysters, clams, and scallops are my favorite thing. So I'm reading the book of Aajonus van der Planets, and it starts out with his story. Now you have to understand, I really hope Vince is still on here, because if you're still on here, Vince, give me a heart or a thumbs up or something. I want to know. Oh, well, all right. But in any case, every book that you read basically starts out with the person's story. You have to tell your story. Your story is everything. Your story is the only thing you really got. You want good marketing, you need a great story. You need your story told great. Whatever your story is, you got to learn how to tell it great. So I'm reading his story. In Aajonus van der Planets, he had every ailment known to man. He lived in constant pain. He had every disease. He was so sick and tired of being sick and tired that he got to the point that he goes out into the desert to starve himself to death. And he figures it's going to take a few days. And he's out in the desert, starving himself to death, when he hears the coyotes. Woo woo! Woo woo woo! He hears the coyotes, right? And he thinks the coyotes are going to come and attack him, but instead of attacking him, the coyotes come and they bring him a dead rabbit. Because the coyotes took pity on him. They didn't want him to die. So they killed a rabbit and brought it to him so that he would have nutrition. And he rips apart this dead rabbit with his hands and teeth. And he eats the dead rabbit and he survives. And that is the beginning of his interest in raw nutrition. And he starts to study all these different ways that he can heal himself with raw nutrition. And he ultimately heals all his ailments and starts to live a life free from pain, free from disease. That's the name of his book, We Want to Live Free from Disease, by Aajonus van der Planets. And then what happens is that his son gets in a car accident. And he goes to visit his son in the hospital, and the doctor says, Mr. van der Planets, I'm very sorry. I have terrible news for you. He says, I'm sorry, Mr. van der Planets. I have terrible news for you. Your son is going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life. If he ever comes out of the coma, that is. And he says, that's ridiculous. And he starts healing his son with raw nutrition. And within 3 weeks, he brings his son out of the coma and able to walk out of the hospital on his own. And I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, wow, here's the guy. He saved his own life. He saved his kid who's in a coma and paralyzed with raw nutrition. I want to be able to walk without having to hold onto the railings. And I start eating raw oysters, clams, and scallops, which are like my favorite things. They're my favorite things. And there's all kinds of different remedies in this book. All kinds of remedies. And what I've noticed in all these different remedies is that there's a whole bunch of ingredients that recur. In the different remedies. There's a question here. If the kid is in a coma, how did he eat it? He fed it to the kid like he like spoon fed it to the kid. Okay, spoon fed it, because one of the principal things that they teach you how to make in this book is what he calls smoothies. Now, here's the ingredients that recur in a lot of the remedies. Number 1, raw milk. Number 2, raw honey. Number 3, raw eggs. Number 4, raw meat, beef. Number 5, raw butter. Like, so many of the recipes. And for sure, like almost every recipe has raw butter in it. Now, here's the problem. There was no raw butter. Raw butter is unpasteurized butter. And you go to the supermarket, do you have any raw butter? No, we don't have any raw butter. We haven't had any raw butter in like decades. There used to be raw butter in California. It used to be produced by Altadena Dairy. Remember that, Dave? But they stopped doing it because somebody got sick and sued Altadena Dairy, and they stopped making all the raw products. So then I call up Altadena Dairy. Hey, can you guys make us raw butter? No, we don't do that anymore. Then I start calling all these different dairies around California. Do you do it? No, we don't do it. Then I start calling creameries. Hey, can I just buy some raw butter? No. How about raw cream? No, we don't do any raw dairy. That's dangerous. Then I start calling different states. Then I start calling like Oregon, right? Washington State, Texas, all over the place. I'm calling. Hey, can I get raw butter? What are you, crazy? Click, hanging up on me. Yeah, all of this is how I met George Bush. I made 153 different phone calls looking for raw butter before finally I called up this lady in the state of Maine. I'm in Los Angeles. I call her in the state of Maine and I say, hey, I'm calling from California. I'm trying to heal my body. I'm on a special nutritional diet. I'm trying to heal my body. There's a whole community of us who are here trying to heal our bodies. A lot of us have cancer, other incurable diseases, and what we need is raw butter. This is what I say on the phone. And the lady's like, well, what do you need that for? And I go, well, it's part of this nutritional protocol that we're trying to follow and we can't get the raw butter. Could you possibly, do you make butter? Yes, I make butter. Could you make butter for me without pasteurizing the cream first? She's like, well, what do you want to pay? And I go, what do you charge for butter? And she goes, I charge $5 a pound. I go, I'll give you $6 a pound if you make the butter for me without pasteurizing the cream first. And she goes, I'll do it under 2 conditions. Number 1, you have to pay me in advance. And number 2, you have to get it off my property. As soon as it's ready, you got to get it off my property. And I go, oh, no problem. You put it in a box. You let me know when it's ready and I'll have FedEx come pick it up. Or you could just call FedEx and they'll come pick it up. I'll give you my address and you can just ship it to me here. And I'll give you my account number with FedEx and they can just charge me. She goes, okay. Sometime the next week, I get back to my boat from working out at the gym. Man, I had a fantastic gym in those days. I was a member of this club called the Marina Del Rey Athletic Club. The Marina Athletic Club, I think it was. If you know the 90 freeway, it used to be in this stretch of like grass in between the eastbound and the westbound Marina Freeway near the end. It was an amazing place. It was like a hangar and we had all these free weights and great machines. And then there was a lap pool with 4 lanes, long lap pool in the back with 4 lanes. Man, that was an amazing gym. And I remember when I got out of my prison sentence, practically, with my daughter's mother. I remember I was swimming in that pool one day, doing my laps, and it was as if I had been released from jail. Like when that lady kicked me out of the house, working out every day. I lost 30 pounds in 6 weeks. I got in the best shape of my life. And swimming laps in that beautiful pool and drinking water every day. I used to have a water bottle and I'd fill it up in the water fountain and drink 2 of those big bottles of water, liters, while I was working out. I used to go there 2.5 hours a day and work out. It was so amazing. And one day I get back from the gym and I'm walking out on the dock to my boat. And there, when I get to my slip, I see there's some kind of box on the back of my boat. And I remember thinking to myself, what the hell is that box on the back of my boat? I had no recollection whatsoever. None. I had no memory of sending that lady a money order for $200. And I get back to my boat, I climb aboard, and I open up the box because I have no idea what it could possibly be. And in the box is 40 pounds of butter in 1 pound plastic deli containers. You know, like when you go to the deli and you say, I want a pound of coleslaw, and they give it to you in a plastic container with a lid. It was like that, except it had this yellow butter. And I bring it inside onto my boat and I open it up and I'm like, I don't even know what to do with it. I don't know how to eat it. I don't eat bread. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with all this butter. And I call up Big Stu, the chiropractor, and I go, hey, Big Stu, guess what? And he goes, what? And I go, guess what I have on my boat right now? He goes, I don't know, what? And I go, I have 40 pounds of raw butter on my boat right now. Yep, grass-fed. Hey, this was 1999, Esther. There was no raw butter in California. There was no raw butter anywhere. I invented raw butter in the United States of America. For all intents and purposes, non exista, as they say here in Mexico. And I go, I got 40 pounds of raw butter on my boat right now. And Big Stu goes, bring me some. So I take one of the pounds and I go climb into my 1972 Ford Bronco. Orange, original paint with the white pinstripe going down the side. Uncut wheel wells. 3 on the tree, right? 3 on the tree. AM radio. I took the top off. I had a bikini top on top of it. And I climb in there with my pound of butter and I go over to Big Stu's dock, a couple of marinas away. And I bring him the butter. And I go on the boat and we sit down and he opens it up and he gets a spoon and he like carefully scrapes some of it off the top and tastes it and he goes, yep, that's raw butter, all right. Like, how the hell does he know that it's raw butter? How? How does he know? And I go, what am I going to do with all this butter? I got 40 pounds of it. He goes, well, will you sell me this one? And I go, okay. He goes, how much do you want for it? I said, I don't know, $10? He goes, okay, here's $10. He gives me $10. That was my first sale of butter. And I go, what am I going to do with the rest? And he goes, I don't know. You could call my friend. He distributes all the raw milk in Southern California. Maybe he'd want some of it. And he gives me this guy's number. Stuart. I haven't had raw butter in a long time, ladies. But in those days, I only ate raw. That was the beginning of 3 years of only eating raw everything. I call up that guy James, who is the milk distributor. And I go, Hey, James, my name is Clint, and I'm a friend of Stu, the chiropractor, and I have 40 pounds of raw butter. And he goes, really? What do you want to do with it? And I go, I don't know. He goes, well, would you sell it to me? And I go, sure. He goes, well, bring it over. And I go over and I meet him at his house in Venice, California. And he has me meet him in the alleyway behind his apartment. And in the alleyway behind his apartment is a garage. And in the garage, he has a walk-in refrigerator in this garage in an alleyway in Venice, California. And in the garage, he has milk, he has raw eggs, he has a little bit of raw cream, and he has cash. And he goes, well, how much do you want for the butter? And I go, I don't know, like $11 a pound? And he goes, done. And he just buys all of it from me. Now that was the beginning of many years of being a raw butter supplier for the raw food primal community in Los Angeles, California. Ultimately, it became known as Rawsome Food Co-op. And after about 6 months of being their supplier, I'm making like, let's see, actually it was only just a few months. It was only just a few months of supplying that butter from Maine. We get to around November. Yeah, this started in like April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, 9 months. We get to November, and all of a sudden the lady in Maine tells me, I'm not going to sell you any more butter. I don't have enough for my own customers. It's getting to be the holidays, and we need the butter here for our own customers for baking during the holidays. And out of the blue, she just cuts me off. Now, keep in mind, I was a taxi driver at that point in time. I was driving a taxi. And because I would get like 2 boxes of butter from that lady every week, that was like 70 pounds of butter. And I was making ultimately about $5 a pound on that butter when all was said and done. So 70 pounds times $5, I was making $350 a week extra as a taxi driver by selling the butter to the raw food co-op. Now, as a taxi driver, I made $500 a week, and then I got another $350 a week from selling them the butter. And man, that made a big difference in my life. That was a huge, huge impact on my life, getting an extra $350 a week instead of just $500. So that when that lady called me up and said, I'm not going to sell you the butter anymore, I was upset, but I didn't know what to do. I'd already called 153 different places around the country, and they all said, raw butter? Are you crazy? We're not going to sell you any raw butter. Then what happened was I went to this seminar. Hello, Cynthia Glickman. It's been way too long. I went to this seminar. It was called the Sterling Men's Weekend. And it was about how to have more power as a man. And I could tell a whole long story about how I got into that. But around this time, I was tired of being a taxi driver. I had been chasing the Hollywood dream for more than 12 years at that point. I'd been driving a cab for more than 6 years. And I wanted to change. And I took 3 seminars around that point that changed my life. The first one was called Life Transformation with Paul Roth. And I took that class with him for about 6 months, and it was $400 a month. Bad I wanted to change. I'm making $500 a week, and I paid $100 a week of that $500 to him because I wanted to change. Then the second seminar I took was this Sterling Men's Weekend. And then the third seminar I took was Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins. And at the Sterling Men's Weekend, it was all about having more power as a man. And when I got out of that seminar, I couldn't talk for a few days because I had been screaming so much. And I found that when I go to these men's seminars, I scream a lot. I've been to quite a few of them. And when I finally got my voice back, you know what I did? I got on the phone again and I started calling more places. And it was less than a day of calling. And I got this lady on the phone in Kansas. And I said to her, hey, my name is Clint. I'm calling from California. I do this special nutritional diet because I'm trying to heal my body from disease. There's a whole bunch of us here and we need raw butter to heal our bodies from cancer and other life-threatening ailments. And she goes, yeah, we make butter. And I said, well, can we have you make us butter without pasteurizing it first? And she goes, yes, we could do that. And I go, okay, well, what do you charge for butter? And she said $5.50 a pound. And I said, okay, I'm going to pay you $6.50 a pound. And she goes, and how much butter do you want? And I said, I'll take all the butter you can make every single week. And she goes, well, we can make like about 100 pounds of butter a week. I said, I'll take it all. And she says to me, you know, Clint, we were just praying this morning. We were praying because we did not know how we were going to be able to pay our mortgage. And I feel like the Lord must have just sent you to us. Well, that began a long association with that family. It lasted about 18 months to 2 years, I think it was. And every other week, I used to send them $7,000 in cash in a FedEx envelope, buying milk from them. Buying all the butter that they could make. It came out to be like 105 pounds every week that I would buy from them. And I would make $5 on each one of those. And then they also would send us 70 pints of cream. And man, that was some really good cream. It was called the yellow top cream. It was plastic bottles with a yellow top. And they would send me 70 pints of yellow top cream every week. And I would make like $5 on each one of those bottles. And I tell you what, by the summertime, I was making so much money that I was able to quit driving the taxi. And I remember I took another seminar around that time. You know, Robert Kiyosaki, he has that game he calls cash flow. And the goal of the game cash flow is to get out of the rat race. And I remember taking a Robert Kiyosaki cash flow seminar through the Learning Annex back then. And I went, and there was like 50 people playing the game. And the goal of the night was, who's going to be the first person to get out of the rat race? And guess who the first person to get out of the rat race was? Me. I won the game. I was the winner of the game. And I was talking to my friend Charles one night on the phone, and he goes, what's going on? And I go, man, you wouldn't even believe it. I'm making like $12,000 a month now. This is a guy, I went from making $2,000 a month driving a cab. By the summer, I was making $12,000 a month. And I was out of the rat race. I was 100% out of the rat race. And I've been out of the rat race ever since then. I've been an entrepreneur since 2000. I've been out of the rat race. No, since 2001. That was December of 2000 that I took the men's weekend. By the summertime, I was out of the rat race, 2001. Now, along the way of selling this butter, it turned out that this raw butter was actually a gourmet butter. Who would have known? Who would have thunk? It was actually gourmet butter, and not just raw, but gourmet too. And one day we get a chef calling up. he wants some butter, and he became my first client. His name was Charlie Trotter. He was the #1 top chef in Chicago. And he became my first restaurant client. And I supplied the table butter for the Charlie Trotter restaurant in Chicago for 12 years until their restaurant closed, from 2001 until 2013. And that's how I got into the restaurant supply industry. I became a supplier, a vendor of butter to restaurants for gourmet chefs. And I tell you, being a butter supplier for gourmet chefs has been a tremendous experience for me, because I've worked with all the very top chefs in the United States. Jean-Georges Vongerichten, Daniel Boulud, Bobby Flay, Gordon Ramsay, Emerald, everybody. A lot of guys you never heard of that were even bigger than them, higher status than them. And one of those restaurants was the Daniel Boulud Brasserie at the Wynn in Las Vegas. It was a beautiful restaurant. When they opened the Wynn, it was one of the original restaurants on the lake. So beautiful. And I was brought in as a vendor there by my friend Philippe Rispoli, who was a long-term protege of Daniel Boulud and was the executive chef of that restaurant. And one Sunday I was there hanging out with Philippe Rispoli as he's mixing a big vat of lobster bisque. And he's got this giant, like this huge, you know those little handheld blenders? He's got one to stir a giant pot, like so giant. And I say to him, Philippe, man, you're the executive chef of this restaurant. What the hell are you doing here on a Sunday all by yourself making a giant pot of lobster bisque? He goes, this is my métier. I love this, man. I love this. This is my métier. And just as he says that, here comes George Bush, 41, ex-president of the United States, walking through the kitchen, followed by 2 Secret Service guys. He just looking around, walking through all by himself. He goes through the kitchen and out into the dining room. And I go to Philippe, holy shit, that was just George Bush, president of the United States. He's like, huh? I'm like, holy shit. And I go running after him into the dining room, and there's George Bush looking around at the lake, just minding his own business. And I this is how much I've changed, okay? I didn't even have the courage to go up to him and talk to him. I didn't want to disturb him. Anybody who knows me today knows I see a celebrity, I make a beeline for the celebrity, because I know I want a photo with a celebrity, because celebrity photos are worth money. Look at my Facebook profile. You'll see all kinds of celebrities in my featured photos up at the top of my Facebook profile. I'm too chicken to go over and talk to George Bush, so I go over to one of his Secret Service guys, and I just so happen to have a little electronic camera in my pocket. Now, this is around 2006, 2007, I think. There wasn't even any iPhones then. But I had taken a seminar with Mark Victor Hansen, who is one of the authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And at that seminar, it was called Mega Book Marketing. And at that seminar, he said, you should always carry a camera, because you never know when you're going to meet somebody that you want to take a picture with. Like, that's how he said it. You'll never know when you want to meet somebody who you want to take a picture with. So always having a camera with you. Just so happened I had a little pocket electronic camera in my pocket. And I go over to the Secret Service guy and I go, excuse me, sir, would it be okay if I got a picture with the president? He goes, sure. And I hand him the camera, and he takes it, and I go over to George H.W. Bush. And I was a huge Reagan fan. Like, I wasn't a fan of George Bush, really. I really wasn't, you know. The only affection I had for George Bush was because he was Ronald Reagan's vice president. And I go over to George Bush. He was very tall. And I said, sir, I voted for you. That was a lie. He said, that's good. And I go, is it okay if I get a picture? And I go, and he goes, sure. And so if you look, if you type in Clint Arthur and George Bush, you will see a picture of me and George Bush on Google. If you Google that, you'll see me and George Bush. And he leaves with his Secret Service guy, and I got my picture. And in the picture, grab her, Allie. In the picture, you can see that George Bush is wearing a necktie with a parachute on it. A lot of parachutes. And that's how I got, now you're locked out. And that's how I got my picture with George Bush. Sí, no necesito. Gracias. What do you want? You want conditioner? Conditioner? Sí, por favor. Gracias. Tres, por favor. Gracias. That's how I got my picture with George Bush. That's how celebrity photo, my friends. And this has been Sunset Storytelling with Clint Arthur. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you tune in again tomorrow at the sunset, you'll get another beautiful sunset and another beautiful story. Good night, everybody.